You could have been anywhere right now, watching something else, doing something else, scrolling past this without stopping. But you stopped. And if Carl Jung were alive today, he would tell you that this is not as random as it seems. That the things we find, the books, the ideas, the conversations that stop us mid-scroll, are rarely accidents. They are answers to questions we have been carrying without knowing how to ask them. Today we go into why, and what it means for where you are right now. 1. Jung's most unsettling idea. Carl Jung spent decades studying something that made his scientific colleagues deeply uncomfortable. Not the unconscious, they could tolerate that. Not archetypes, strange but manageable. What made them uncomfortable was the thing Jung kept returning to in his later years. The thing he spent the final decades of his life trying to articulate with enough precision to be taken seriously. The idea that the boundary between inner and outer reality is not as solid as we assume. That what happens inside a person, the questions they carry, the psychological work they are doing or avoiding, the specific stage of development they are in, sometimes appears to influence what happens around them. Not through any mechanism science could identify, through what Jung called synchronicity, meaningful coincidence. The simultaneous occurrence of an inner state and an outer event that are connected not by cause and effect, but by meaning. You are thinking about someone you haven't spoken to in years. They call. You are wrestling with a specific question. You open a book randomly to the exact passage that addresses it. You are at a crossroads internally. You meet, apparently by chance, precisely the person who carries what you need. Jung documented hundreds of these cases across his clinical career. Not as proof of the supernatural, as evidence of something stranger and more interesting. That the psyche and the world are not as separate as the modern mind insists. That sometimes, at specific moments of genuine psychological readiness, the outer world arranges itself in response to something happening in the inner one. 2. Why you stopped here. Let's be specific about what Jung's framework says about this moment. You did not find this video through a random sequence of unrelated events. You found it because something in you was already looking. Not consciously, perhaps. Not in the deliberate sense of sitting down and searching for exactly this. But at the level of the psyche that Jung was always pointing toward. The deeper level, beneath the conscious management of daily life. Something was oriented toward this direction. A question was already alive in you. A recognition was already forming. A readiness, built through whatever you have been living through recently, or for years, was already present. And the algorithm, the recommendation engine, the sequence of choices that brought you here, simply became the instrument through which the inner orientation found its outer expression. Jung would not be surprised by this. He spent his entire career arguing that the inner and outer are more deeply connected than the rational mind wants to accept. The synchronicity is not in the technology. The technology is simply the current era's version of the mechanism. The synchronicity is in the meeting, between what you were already carrying and what this moment contains. 3. The question you have been carrying. Here is what Jung's clinical work revealed about synchronicities. They do not happen randomly. They cluster around moments of genuine psychological significance, around major decisions that have not yet been made, around grief that has not yet been fully metabolized, around a stage of development that is trying to begin, or trying to complete, around a truth that has been circling the edges of consciousness, not yet fully faced. So the question Jung would ask you, directly, without softening it, is this: what have you been carrying? Not what is going on in your life in the surface sense, the job, the relationship, the practical concerns. What has been present underneath all of that? The question that returns when the noise stops. The feeling that persists, despite your best efforts to manage it into something more comfortable. The thing you know, at some level that precedes language, that you have been moving toward or avoiding or trying to understand. That thing, whatever it is for you, in this specific period of your life, is almost certainly connected to why you stopped here. Not as a mystical claim, as a psychological observation. We stop at the things that are speaking to what we are already carrying. And the fact that this stopped you is information. 4. The timing is never accidental. Jung made a distinction that most people miss when they first encounter his work. He was not claiming that everything happens for a reason, in the cosmic, predetermined sense. He was claiming something more precise, that the psyche has its own timing, and that this timing, the specific moment at which a person becomes ready to encounter a particular idea, a particular truth, a particular mirror, is not random, it is developmental. The same book read at 20 and at 35 are two completely different experiences. Not because the book changed, because the reader did. The same idea encountered before you had lived enough to understand it, and after you had, lands in entirely different places. This is why certain things find you when they do. Not because they were waiting in a cosmic queue for your name to come up, but because you, through the specific accumulation of everything you have lived, everything you have lost, everything you have been forced to confront, have arrived at the readiness to receive what they contain. The timing of this moment is not accidental. You are here because something in you has been developed, through everything that came before, to the exact point where this can land somewhere real. 5. What the unconscious has been building. Here is what Jung's framework reveals about the period leading up to moments like this one. The unconscious, the deep, ungoverned, extraordinarily intelligent layer of the psyche that operates beneath conscious awareness, does not sleep. While the conscious mind is managing the day, executing the tasks, maintaining the performance of ordinary life, the unconscious is working, processing everything that the conscious mind experienced and did not fully metabolize, building connections between things that the conscious mind encountered separately, moving, with its own unhurried but purposeful momentum, towards something. Jung called this movement individuation, the lifelong, underground, often invisible process of becoming more fully who you actually are. And this process, like all genuine developmental processes, has its moments of surfacing, moments when what has been building underneath becomes visible, when the pressure of the interior finally finds its expression in the outer world. When you stop scrolling, when a sentence lands with a weight that is disproportionate to its length, when something resonates at a frequency that the rational mind cannot fully explain, these moments are not interruptions of the process. They are the process breaking the surface. What you are feeling right now, the recognition, the resonance, whatever brought you here and is keeping you here, is the unconscious announcing that something has been built, something is ready, something is asking to become conscious. 6. The message Jung actually left. Jung was not a mystic in the popular sense. He was a scientist, trained, rigorous, deeply committed to honest observation, who followed his observations further than his training had prepared him to go. And what those observations led him to, what he spent the last decades of his life trying to communicate clearly enough that it could survive his death, was a message that is simultaneously very simple and almost impossible to fully receive. The message is this: you are not who you think you are. Not in the diminishing sense, in the expanding one. The self you have been managing, presenting, protecting, and building your life around is not the whole of you. Beneath it, beneath the persona, beneath the adapted, socially functional, carefully maintained conscious identity is something larger, something that has been present since before the conditioning began, something that the conditioning could cover but could not erase, something that has been, with extraordinary patience, through every distraction and avoidance and detour, trying to reach you, through dreams you dismissed as noise, through symptoms you medicated away, through the irrational pull toward certain things that you rationalized into something manageable, through the persistent sense, quiet, uncomfortable, never entirely gone, that the life you are living is not quite the one you were meant for. This is not depression. This is not ingratitude. This is the self, Jung's term for the organizing center of the total psyche, announcing that it is present, and that it has something for you, and that it has been waiting for you to become quiet enough, and honest enough, and ready enough to finally hear it. 7. What readiness actually looks like. Most people imagine readiness as a state of preparation, as having figured out enough, healed enough, achieved enough, to be ready for whatever comes next. Jung's clinical observation was precisely the opposite. Readiness, the genuine kind, the kind that synchronicities cluster around, does not look like completion. It looks like exhaustion with the previous position. The moment you are genuinely ready to encounter something new is almost never a moment of strength and clarity. It is more often a moment of having fully, finally, honestly admitted that what you have been doing is not working. That the strategy you have been using to manage the interior, the busyness, the achievement, the relationship, the avoidance, the performance, has been found out. Not by someone else, by you. In the quiet moment when you could not pretend, even to yourself, that it was producing what you told yourself it would produce. If you are in that moment, or recently out of it, that is what readiness looks like. And synchronicities, in Jung's experience, cluster most densely around exactly this kind of moment. Because the psyche, the deep, intelligent, purposeful psyche, knows when a door has been opened, and it moves immediately toward what the open door can now receive. 8. What this moment is asking of you. Jung was not interested in insight that remained insight. He was interested in insight that changed something. Not dramatically, not necessarily immediately, but genuinely. The encounter with a significant idea, the moment of recognition, the resonance that brought you here and has kept you here, is not the destination. It is the beginning of a question. What does this recognition want me to do? Not in the large, overwhelming sense. In the next specific, honest, particular sense. What is the one thing, the one small, genuine, uncomfortable, growth-directed thing that this moment is pointing toward? For some people, it is a conversation they have been avoiding. For some, it is a direction they have been pretending not to know. For some, it is an honest admission, to themselves before anyone else, about the distance between the life they are living and the one they know they are capable of. For some, it is simply, and this is not small, the decision to start paying attention to the dreams, to the patterns, to the irrational pulls and persistent resonances that the noise has been drowning out, to take seriously, for perhaps the first time, the possibility that the interior is not chaos to be managed, but intelligence to be heard. 9. The 7 things Jung would tell you right now. Not as comfort, as instruction. First, the fact that this resonates is not coincidence. Your nervous system is not producing recognition randomly. Something in what you encountered here is speaking to something already present in you. Take that seriously. It is information about where you are and what you are ready for. Second, the timing of this moment is not accidental. You arrived here through a specific sequence of choices, experiences, and accumulated readiness. The question is not why now. The question is, what now? What does the timing of this encounter want you to do with it? Third, the question you have been carrying is more important than the answer. Jung believed that the questions that persist, that return regardless of how many times you try to resolve them, are the most important questions available to you. Do not rush to answer them. Learn to live with them. Let them work on you. Let them develop you into someone capable of receiving what they are really asking. Fourth, what you feel when something resonates is a compass. The specific quality of recognition, the resonance that is different from mere agreement, that lands somewhere below the level of intellectual assent, is the psyche indicating direction. You have felt it in this encounter. Notice where else you feel it. Follow it more deliberately. Fifth, the interior is not the enemy. Everything you have been avoiding by staying on the surface, the feelings, the questions, the unexamined patterns, is not there to destroy you. It is there to develop you. The interior, honestly encountered, is the most reliable guide available to any human being. Sixth, you are further along than you think. The fact that you are here, that this found you, that it landed, that you stayed, is not nothing. It is evidence of development that may have been invisible to you while it was happening. The readiness you feel in this moment was built by everything that came before. Give that the weight it deserves. Seventh, the next move is smaller than you think. The insight of a moment like this can feel like it demands an enormous response, a dramatic change, a complete overhaul. Jung would counsel otherwise. The next move is always small, specific, honest, immediate. One conversation, one admission, one decision to pay attention differently, one evening without the noise, one morning with the question instead of the scroll. Small, specific, now. 10. The final truth. Jung wrote, in the last letter of his long life, something that reads like a final transmission. He wrote that he was not certain of very many things, but he was certain of this: that the human soul, the deep, ungoverned, extraordinarily patient interior life of every human being, is always trying to reach the person it lives in, through every available channel, through the dream and the symptom and the synchronicity, through the book that falls open and the conversation that stops you, through the video that finds you when you were not exactly looking, but were, at some level below the looking, already oriented toward. The soul does not give up. This is perhaps the most remarkable thing Jung found in his decades of watching human beings. The interior does not abandon the person it belongs to. However long the avoidance, however thorough the distraction, however many layers of performance and management and noise have been constructed between the surface and the depths, the soul keeps trying. With patience that has no human equivalent, with loyalty that asks nothing except eventually, finally, in whatever moment becomes available, to be heard. This moment is available. You didn't find this video. It found you. Because something in you, something that has been building and waiting and trying to reach you through every channel the noise blocked, finally found one that got through. The question is not why it found you. The question is what you are going to do now that it has. If this landed somewhere real, somewhere beneath the surface, in the place where you recognize things rather than simply understand them, that recognition is not the end of something. It is the beginning. If you want more content on Carl Jung's psychology, synchronicity, the unconscious, shadow work, and the deep architecture of a genuinely awakened human life, subscribe now. Because the things that find you are always trying to tell you something. And this one is no different.